Good evening. I'd like to call the Zoning Board of Appeals for Tuesday, July 11th, 2023 to order. Will the city call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Defoe.
Here.
Mr. Friedman.
Here.
Mr. Rogers.
Here.
Ms. Libet.
Present.
Mr. Havas. Madam Chair, you have a quorum to conduct business.
Thank you. Are there any communications?
There are none at this time.
Okay, thank you. So we will move into our public hearing. For those of you who haven't joined us before, I'll briefly describe how we conduct business. The city will call the case by the case number. They'll read a brief description of that case. If you're the appellant, we ask you to step to the microphone, explain to us, state your name and address, sorry for the record, and then explain to us what you're asking for and why. Then the city will read findings of fact. We'll ask you to agree with those facts or add any other facts at that time. Then the city will read a recommendation. You, as the appellant, will have another opportunity to speak. Then we will turn it over to public comment. So if you're here to speak on that case, that would be your opportunity to step forward. Again, state your name and address for the record and give your comments. There's also a sign-in sheet if you're speaking during public comment to sign in at the podium before you speak, please. And then we'll turn it over to the board to discuss and make a decision. We do ask the appellant to stay near the front of the auditorium as we may have additional questions. And then we'll move on to the next case and any subsequent cases. So will the city call the first case, please?
Yes, ma'am. Zoning Board of Appeals case 23-14. The appellant Carmen Stewart, owner, is requesting the following waiver from the board. To construct a new single-family residence with a non-conforming front yard setback, 11.64 feet proposed, 40 feet required. The property is located on the south side of Lake Ravines Drive between Thorncliffe Street and Cherrymore Lane at 0 Lake Ravines Drive. Sidwell parcel 2430351-053, zoned RE, single-family residential. This appeal is to Section 5.193, Article 22, Chapter 45 of the Southfield City Code, more commonly known as the zoning ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Is the appellant present? Hi there. If you could both just state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Becky Klein. I'm the civil engineer of record on this with PEA Group. Address is 58105 Van Dyke, Washington Township, Michigan. With me is the property owner, Carmen Stewart. Your address?
24614 Lois Lane Drive,
Right, in the city?
Southfield, Michigan.
Thank you very much. So if you could explain to us what you're asking for and why. Either of you is fine.
Yes. So what we have here is a very unique parcel of land in the city of Southfield. And I believe this is the reason it's been undeveloped for so long. Most of the property is a fairly deep ravine, and the area of flat land that's suitable for development is actually very small and tucked up very close to Lake Ravines Drive. So most of the site is heavily wooded. There are a couple of patchy areas of wetland out there that you can see delineated in the middle of the drawing. And then, of course, the dark hatched area running along the southwesterly property line is the floodplain and the tributary to the Rouge River. So it's a very unique, beautiful little piece of property, and Carmen would like to build a home there. And in order to do that, we're going to have to overcome some really interesting engineering challenges. There'll be some deep foundations, some tall stilts. The home will have some really nice dramatic views when it's complete. But really, in order to make this feasible without having to bring in a lot of fill and build it, basically build up the land underneath it in order to make it work at the traditional setback distance, we're requesting this variance so that we can disturb that natural woodland area as little as possible. Carmen's very sensitive to the beautiful nature of the site as it is. We intend to keep most of the trees undisturbed on the property. In fact, the plan that we have will only have to take out about 12 trees. So the rest of that area is going to remain as a nice habitat and beautiful kind of nature area. So that's the reason for our request.
Okay, thank you. Will the city read the findings of fact, please?
Findings of fact, case 2314. The appellant Carmen Stewart, owner, is requesting the following waiver from the board to construct a new single-family residence with a non-conforming front yard setback, 11.64 feet proposed, 40 feet required. The property is located on the south side of Lake Ravines Drive between Thorncliffe Street, Cherrymore Lane, at 0 Lake Ravines Drive, Sidwell, parcel 2430351-053, zoned RE, single-family residential. This appeal is to section 5.193, article 22, chapter 45 of the Southfield City Code, more commonly known as the zoning ordinance. The properties to the north, south, east, and west are zoned RE, single-family residential, and are developed with single-family dwellings in the Ravines subdivision. Field inspection of the surrounding areas reveals the properties to the north, south, east, and west are mostly 1- and 2-story single-family dwellings. The exteriors are made mostly of brick and siding. Most of the homes in the area have attached garage. The construction of surrounding properties ranges from 1,400 square feet to 2,500 square feet. The surrounding properties are mostly conforming with lot size setbacks and lot coverage requirements. The subject property is a 1.05 acre vacant lot. The Ravines branch of the Rouge River below Carpenter Lake Dam runs along the southwest property line of the subject property. Approximately 1/3 of the subject property is protected wetlands and is in the flood hazard area. The appellant proposes to construct a 2-story single-family residence on the northeasterly edge of the floodplain and protected wetlands, which places the entire house inside the required 40-foot front yard setback. The appellant requests a waiver to construct a new single-family residence with non-conforming front yard setback, 11.64 feet proposed, 40 feet required.
Thank you. Do you agree with those facts?
That is correct.
Okay, are there any other facts that you'd like to add at this time?
No, but I'd be happy to answer any questions the board members might have on this.
Okay, thank you. Will the city read the staff recommendation, please?
Staff recommendation is to deny the waiver to for a decrease of 28.36 feet in front yard setback for the following reasons. The proposed waiver creates a substantial detriment to the public good and substantially impairs the intent of the ordinance. The proposed waiver is not consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance and of the regulations which apply to that zoning district. The proposed waiver is not in keeping with the character of the surrounding area and would have an adverse or detrimental effect upon adjacent and surrounding properties.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we would open public comment on this case. If you wish, again, to speak to this case, which is 23-14, now would be your opportunity. And you just step forward to the podium and state your name and address and speak to the board.
Good evening. My name is Dan Markson. I live
You
at...
can lift the microphone straight. There you go.
Thanks. I live at 23660 Lake Ravines Drive. I am one of 2 homes that will be directly impacted by this development if it proceeds. We moved into the house a little over a year ago, and what drew us to this specific land, the neighborhood, the property, was sort of its historic value, its precedence, its beauty, and one of the things was also the distance from the road that the houses were. We are right next to the Carpenter Lake Preserve. We walk there daily, and the lot that's in question here is heavily wooded. You can see visible egress paths for the wildlife there. There are large mature trees that are keeping the grounds sustainable. And my concern is not only the visible impact that has to the neighborhood, but also what that will do to the standard of living and the nature that keeps that neighborhood intact. I just wanted to bring up that granting this variance would be a reduction of the development standard that would have a serious adverse effect upon the surrounding neighborhood and would reduce the existing character of such residential area to the detriment of the community. Section 5.161 or 5.61 of the Southfield zoning ordinance. Most of the homes on Lake Ravines Drive have a setback of about 75 feet. So to put that in perspective and put a 10-foot or 11.5-foot distance would would be a huge visual impact to what is historically set in a 60-plus-year-old neighborhood. It has architectural precedents, it has socioeconomic precedents, it just has a lot of history behind it. I feel like this decision would counteract, what has been said thus far. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you sign? Yep, sign in. Thank you so much. Anyone else like to speak to this case?
Good afternoon.
Hello.
My name is Gene Cross. I live at 22802 Lake Ravines Drive. I too concur with the decision that the department made and the neighbor. I put it in writing to the board this afternoon. I turned in a letter, and I'm concurring with everything these people have said. It would be a dramatic impact to the community. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lakeisha Jackson Hill. I reside at 23690 Lake Ravines Drive with my husband, Brandon Hill. We recently purchased our home directly across from that parcel of land in February of 2022. So the only point that I would say is that, when we originally purchased a piece of property, you take those visual aspects into account when you do make a purchase of that nature. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I know for certain all the impacts that could happen, but considering the fact that we are directly across from that property, I just didn't know if there was a way to possibly not make it so, like the 11.6 seems really close to our area, and kind of like our master bedroom actually sits on that side of the house, the living room's on that side of the house, so it's kind of like, that setback not being there just makes me pause a little bit. So I just wanted to express my concerns, not to say that that's not something that we all could work through as neighbors, but that was something I took into account when coming today, and also just being concerned of whether or not that would affect the aesthetic there, and if it would negatively impact our property value or anything like that. I don't know the impacts of that either, so I just wanted to bring that concern forward. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is William Newell. I'm a resident at 22840 Timberline Drive, and we've been in that location since 1973. We have been pleased to be a part of a very beautiful neighborhood, along with the fact that we went through a time when it looked like the values were being somewhat degraded, but luckily we have overcome that now, and we're headed in a positive direction. And I would like to lend my support to the rejection of the request.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this case?
Good evening. I'm Gloria Hardy. I too reject the building of the home there because it's out of harmony with the whole entire subdivision. I guess I don't see the land there for the home. I haven't gotten the size of the home, but I've looked at this area several times, and I just don't see it. So I reject the building of the home too.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Robert Haynes. I live at 23660 Lake Ravines Drive. I just echo the comments that have been made so far. I did want to point out a couple of other things, though, that you can't see the parcel on this map because this is the Southfield woodland map. The entire parcel is covered by the woodland designation. I don't know precisely what extra obligations that flows to an owner of a parcel, but I do know that the city of Southfield has seen fit to designate that parcel as a woodland area, and as you can see on the map that's there now, a substantial watershed area as well. This parcel, I've set foot onto it several times. I didn't actually know anybody owned it, I'm sorry. But it's essentially an extension of the Carpenter Lake Nature Preserve. It's steps away from it. The deer flow in and out of it all day long. I think they might actually sleep there. It's not the best parcel in the world to build a house on. It's why it's sat there for more than half a century and nobody has ever tried to develop it. More than that, the fact that the parcel was purchased in its condition, and the fact that the zoning ordinance was already in existence at the time that the parcel was purchased does not permit the applicant the opportunity to say that there was a hardship or a difficulty created by the parcel. Those hardships and difficulties pre-existed the purchase of the parcel, and under Michigan Supreme Court precedents, if it's a self-imposed hardship or difficulty, then the Zoning Board of Appeals, any Zoning Board of Appeals in the state, is not entitled to permit a variance based upon that. I have nothing further. Just thank you for your time, and I request that you reject the request for a variance.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening. You
My
can pull the
name is-
microphone down closer to you if that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Helen Merritt. I live at 23238 Thorncliffe, right on the other side of that water area. I noticed last year they were out cutting trees, working on, I can't tell you what, and they closed the street. I walked down and asked, what's going on here? No one could give me an answer. I didn't follow up any further than the gentlemen that were working there. But at that point, I felt like something was going to happen. As of today, I'm finding out something was happening. Someone probably was buying the property, but that is not a good spot for a home in that area. It's not enough space. It's not enough space for children if children are playing in that area. It's not, you would not be comfortable in that home. There are beautiful birds in the area. You're probably going to run them away. There are a number of deers in the area, which you can run away, but that's where they live. So I agree with what's been said by everyone that's spoken about this particular item. So I'm sorry for the individual that's buying it, but I hope you do not approve of this particular purchase or any purchase.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for signing in, appreciate it. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? This is your final opportunity. Seeing no one standing, I'm going to close public comment. I will not. I will reopen public comment, just in time.
Good evening. I am Roberta Saunders, and I live at 22951 Thorncliffe. I concur with everything that everyone said that reject having a home built at that spot. I just wanted to let you know that I agree with them.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we are now at the last opportunity for public comment. No movement? Okay, we're going to close public comment and turn it back over to the board. Mr. Friedman? Oh, actually, we should read this letter that we received, even though Mr. Cross also spoke.
Okay. This is a letter from Gene A. Cross, 22802 Lake Ravines Drive, Southfield, Michigan. It is in regards to the Zoning Board of Appeals. It says, objections to granting a proposed non-conforming front yard setback 11.664 feet instead of required 40-foot setback per section 5.193, Article 22, Chapter 45 of the Southfield City Code, commonly known as the zoning ordinance, Sidwell parcel 24303511053 zone. Per Article 4, the general provisions 5.18 of the city ordinance addresses the issue of non-conforming. Also in Ravines deed agreement, page 8, to allow a front yard setback of 11.64 rather than 40-foot required would violate both documents and the Ravines district. Furthermore, to allow a reduction in setback would create an aesthetic effect and reduction in visibility for the current homeowners to the southeast of the subject property. Thank you.
Okay, great. Do you have any comments or questions?
I appreciate all the neighbors that have come to give their objections to the front yard setback. I just had a question for the architect or for the homeowner. Is there simply no other way to build a house on that property?
So yes, I mean, there's always a way to build on the property and meet the setbacks. The problem is the further you push away from the road frontage, the steeper the property gets, which means more impact. Besides the cost to the homeowner, as was previously noted, this is a woodland area. There are a lot of mature trees here. We tucked it in there to try to preserve as many of those existing beautiful trees as possible. If I move that back, I'm going to be removing more of those trees. So it can be done, but there's a cost.
So I would say, ironically, I think what some of the neighbors most object to is the cutting down of all those trees. But I think in this case, the variance being such a large, such a large waiver to this setback that it sort of gives them the right to stand and ask us to not grant the waiver, and the city doesn't want us to do it either. So I would vote, with the city and deny the waiver. Again, but it's not that I wouldn't see in a different case granting a smaller waiver.
Right. Well, a couple things. First off, the 40-foot setback is the minimum requirement. So if we met that, the home would still be about twice as close to the road as any of the other homes in the area. So there's still going to be a visual impact.
I understand. I just mean that
Right.
then the waiver,
Yep, understood.
Our authority.
Our authority is to grant
Yes.
waivers. We might grant a small waiver despite the neighbors' objections, but we would, all the neighbors objecting to it are standing on the back of a really large waiver to the city of Southfield setback.
Right. We did prepare an alternate layout, and I do have that here with me, that would would move the building back, and I think instead of a almost 30-foot waiver on the setback, we would only need about a 9.85-foot waiver.
So
I
you
don't
would
know
need to
if-
bring that as a separate case.
I would, okay,
Yeah.
I can resubmit that. But, yeah, we're going to wind up needing some kind of a waiver on this because pushing it any further back would put us in the floodplain or the wetland, which is, you know, that we're caught between the ordinance of the city of Southfield and then the state regulated areas on the property. So, but yes, I can submit that separately as a new application.
Okay, any other?
No, you know, and as I said, you know, if you wouldn't need a waiver, I assume your neighbors would still not like to see all those trees cut down, but then they wouldn't.
Yeah, well, that's the option here, and we were trying to be sensitive to natural area, remove as few trees as possible, so if we have to conform to the letter of the law or something closer to the letter of the law, then what's going to happen here is that more of those trees are going to be removed.
I understand that.
So.
But as I said, as it currently stands, I'd have to vote to
Understood.
deny the waiver.
I'd be happy to provide those if any of you would like to see it just as a reference for this evening, but otherwise we'll make a new formal submittal.
Yeah, at this point, we just have to deal with the facts that are before us and that have been presented in this case.
Right.
Mr. Rogers?
Quick question for you. The proposal that you're having right now with the short setback, is the house, as it sits there, do you require any additional like pilings for the footings and things like that, or?
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a deep retaining wall foundation. Part of the deck will be supported on some fairly tall pilings to get it up above the surrounding grade. So in order to keep the house more or less at the grade level of the property, you're looking at right now, I think our tallest post is about 14 foot. So right where the deck is kind of projecting out over the floodplain a little bit. The posts are outside of the floodplain, but they're at the deck is like 14 feet above the surface of the ground there. As we move the building back, those things are going to get taller and deeper.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking that. How far from the actual asphalt of Lake Ravines Drive to the front door is it?
Right now, looking at it, I would say that's about 25 feet.
25 feet? From the actual street?
Yeah,
Okay.
might be a little more than that. Could be 30 feet. I don't have a scale with me.
Okay. No, I sat there for a while and looked at the property. I appreciate all the neighbors coming in and giving their opinions. I don't like telling somebody who owns property they can't build a house on it. That's like, I don't know what that is. But I also understand the circumstances and the context that we're dealing with here. You know, first thing when I thought of when I was there, I was like, okay, the house is a little closer to the street, or do we have a, you know, a walking community? Our car's going to come around that corner and have to slam on the brakes because there's, you know, small kids in the driveway there. So that's why I was asking you about how far it was, the distance from the front door. Those are the things I would concern myself with. I realize that if you have to kick that house back and get all the way into that steep area, you're going to be, I mean, the cost has got to be not worth building the house, unless you don't care about spending money. But so I'm kind of torn. I feel for the neighbors in regard that they're used to that property being almost basically an extension nature preserve of Carpenter Lake, which is nice. But to tell the owner of the property you can't do anything with it, I'm sorry you bought it, that's not good either. I like what Mr. Friedman had to say about the fact that we're coming in and we're deciding this large 30-foot variance is you know, kind of a little bit of an, you know, we're flexing our I don't know, our authority a little bit, yeah. And for some reason, I don't want to be the one that says to be like that. I want to say, hey, I want you to be able to build a house on the property, but I also want you to make it so that it's as good as you can make it without, you know, harming everything around it. I like the fact that you're going to save all the trees. I'm very much into nature myself. So like I said, it's hard. I wouldn't necessarily want a variance of 30 feet, but I'd like to see something developed on that property. Maybe more creativity is required. I don't know. Maybe a compromise in the size of the house. Maybe the way it's situated. I don't know. But that's where I'm holding right now.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Levitt?
My first note that I wrote was, what would it take to come into compliance for this house? And so I understand that next time we might have a plan for that. Is that correct? Is that what I heard you say?
I have a plan that will get us closer to compliance.
Okay.
I can get less than 10 feet out of compliance. Can't really get any closer to compliance unless we totally redesign the house. Because as you're pushing further back, you're entering kind of a V that's formed by the linear wetlands on the right and by the floodplain and wetland area on the left. So you can see that the house is a little bit linear with the garage next to it, and in that configuration, you run out of room. So I can make this work, as I said, if I pull it back to a slightly over 30-foot setback, which would be a variance of, I think, 9.85 feet would be the request.
So
Otherwise, we have to go back to the drawing board.
So you definitely have a plan for the house?
I have it right here.
For the house?
Oh, yeah, the applicant had an architectural design already prepared before we started the process.
I look forward to seeing that.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions. I think all my questions that I had have been either answered by neighbors or answered by our board members' questions. I mean, I think at this point, this board is in agreement that this plan that's before us will be denied. We need to take a vote, but that's what I'm hearing from my members. You know, I mean, I think you're going to have the same opposition at 30 feet, right? So, I mean, I think I agree with, you know, Mr. Rogers when he said, like, I think a parcel this unique really needs some creativity, you know? Maybe there's, you know, some stilting across that line of wetlands that then brings it in that 40 feet or some other, you know, I think you might need to go back to the drawing board on the house because, you know, we really do appreciate when neighbors show up. This is probably the fullest room in the 10 years I've been on the board that this meeting has ever had. And, you know, we are neighbors, right? We all live here in Southfield as well, and we care about what happens in our communities, in our neighborhoods. And, you know, we really take what, you know, neighbors' desires who have lived here, you know, a short time or a long time, right? They bought their property and have an expectation to, you know, their quality of life as well. So, I mean, I would really encourage you to see if you can go back to the drawing board and find something that's within the ordinance that isn't asking for any variance.
Okay. So, yeah, if that's the opinion of the majority, that's what we'll do. I believe that if we don't have to come back before this board, if we conform.
It'll save you $400 too.
Yeah, then there's no further oversight. It just goes through the building department.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So, Mr. Rogers, will you make a motion on this?
Yes. In regard to case 23-14, the appellant Carmen Stewart, owner, is requesting the following waiver from the board to construct a new single-family residence with a non-conforming front yard setback, 11.64 feet proposed, 40 feet required. Property is located on the south side of Lake Ravines Drive between Thorncliffe Street and Cherrymore Lane at 0 Lake Ravines Drive, Sidwell parcel 24-30-351-053, zoned RE, single-family residential. I make a motion to deny the waiver for a decrease of 28.36 feet in front yard setback for the following reasons. The proposed waiver creates a substantial detriment to the public good and substantially impairs the intent of the ordinance. The proposed waiver is not consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance and the regulations which apply to the zoning district. and the proposed waiver is not in keeping with the character of the surrounding area and would have an adverse or detrimental effect upon adjacent or surrounding properties.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor to deny, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this request has been denied, and we will move on to the next case, please.
The next case is Zoning Board of Appeals, case 23-15. The appellant Roger and Linda Wilkins, owners, are requesting the following waiver from the board to permit the storage of a camper-style travel trailer on a vacant lot without the primary use of a
I'm
single-family
sorry, folks, if you
dwelling.
could move into the hallway, please. There's so much feedback on these microphones. Thank you.
The property is located on the west side of Indian Street between Shiawassee Road and Adeline Drive at 0 Indian Street, which is a correction from the legal notice. Sidwell parcel 2431176-011, zoned RE, single-family residential. This appeal is to sections 5.62, Article 5, Chapter 45 of the Southfield City Code, more commonly known as the zoning ordinance.
Great, thank you. Are the appellants here?
Good evening. I'm
Hi, good
Roger-
evening. If you could lift that microphone back up to you.
Good evening. I'm Roger Wilkins. This is my wife Linda, and we do reside at 21800 Indian Street. And we do have the camper, and we didn't know about the regulation of being oversized or whatever. And we're here to see if we can get that appealed, because we do, on our street, we are the farthest setback of anybody on the street. You know, everybody else is maybe 50 feet, 75 feet. We're over 500 feet from the road. So, you know, almost 2 football fields back from the road. And the camper, where it was stored, is behind a privacy fence, which you really can't see from the road. And it's, you know, you can't see the camper from the road. And so, I mean, it's not like it's obstructing anybody or, you know, I don't, it's, yeah, so we're just asking for, that we could, an ordinance that we could keep the camper there. Because we are very far off the road and there is a privacy fence, and I don't believe it's, you know, bothering anybody. So that's basically what we want.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything to add? Just make sure you go right to the microphone.
Hi,
Thank you.
I'm Linda Wilkins. I'm the co-resident and of the 21800 Indian Street. We just, we're asking for a variance because of the length of the camper exceeding the limit.
Okay, sounds good. Will the city read the findings of fact, please?
Findings of fact, case 23-15. The appellants Roger and Linda Wilkins, owners, are requesting the following waiver from the board to permit the storage of a camper-style travel trailer on a vacant lot without the primary use of a single-family dwelling. The property is located on the west side of Indian Street between Shiawassee Road and Adeline Drive, 0 Indian Street. Sidwell parcel 2431176-011, zoned RE, single-family residential. This appeal is to sections 5.62, Article 5, Chapter 45 of the Southfield City Code, more commonly known as the zoning ordinance. This property, the properties to the north, southeast are zoned RE. The properties to the west are zoned R1, single-family residential, and are developed with single-family dwellings in the Riverside Estates subdivision. Field inspection of the surrounding area reveals the properties to the north, south, and east and west are mostly single-story bungalow-style dwellings. The exteriors are made of siding and brick. Dwellings in this area have mostly detached garages, with a few properties not having a garage. The subject property is a 2.89-acre vacant lot. The Rouge River passes through the property and has designated wetlands and floodplain restrictions. The subject property is being used primarily for a commercial business. The property is being used to store large amounts of firewood, large logs, construction equipment, including trucks, a skid steer, scaffolding, several trailers, ATVs, used tires, piles of brush, piles of dirt, lean-to sheds, a boat, a log fence, large amounts of fill and dirt have been brought in to construct a road through the designated wetlands and floodplains to access the Rouge River.
Okay. Do you agree with those facts?
Well, it's not a road, it's a toboggan hill, basically, is all it is a toboggan hill. It's not a road.
Okay, it's a, what did you call it?
A toboggan hill.
Oh, toboggan.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
I'm
what it
sorry,
is,
got
it's
it.
toboggan hill.
Okay. Okay, are there any other facts you want to add?
A lot of the wood, I mean, I've cleaned up a lot of it, and I'm cleaning up I cut wood today, get rid of wood, and that will be, my neighbor, I think most of the wood he's talking about is my neighbor, has all the logs. I do have some logs, so I do have fireplaces, and I cut wood and stack it and burn it, because we actually heat the house with wood in the winter. So, but yeah, I mean, I've got it stacked, and I am cutting every day and stacking wood every day.
Okay.
I mean, when you do bring logs in, they do dump them off, so I do need a little bit of time to, put them up and stack them and cut them.
Okay, but you use it for a wood-burning stove, or a wood-burning furnace?
Yeah, this is a kind of separate issue from the trailer anyways, correct? We're here for the trailer today.
But it speaks to the usage of the property. So
Yeah.
are you using the property for commercial purpose?
No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
So the wood is used for
Yeah,
wood burning your
the wood
home?
is for burning, we heat the whole
Heating
house
the
with
home.
wood.
Okay.
And the skidster is to lift up the logs. It's not for commercial use. I'm retired.
Okay,
This is not for a business. I'm
Okay.
retired.
We have
Okay.
two fireplaces.
Yeah, we have two fireplaces completely, one in the, downstairs and one upstairs. We completely heat the house with wood. And the skidster is not a commercial skidster. It's for lifting up the logs and stacking firewood like that. We do have some trailers, whatever, but yeah, it's nothing commercial.
okay, okay. Will the city read the staff recommendation, please?
Staff recommendation is to deny the waiver to permit the storage of a camper-style travel trailer on the vacant lot without the primary use of a single-family dwelling. This recommendation is based on the following. Due to the current condition of the property, the proposed storage of a camper-style travel trailer on the vacant lot would be a detriment to the public good and substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance. The proposed storage of a camper-style trailer on the vacant lot is not consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance and the regulations which apply to the zoning district. The proposed storage of a camper-style travel trailer on a vacant lot is not in keeping with the character of the surrounding area and would have an adverse and detrimental effect upon adjacent surrounding properties.
Okay, thank you. Anything else you would like to add
I don't think we do we?
I have a hearing loss, so I didn't hear everything he said, and I don't have a copy of what he said.
Okay. He basically said he wants to deny the waiver, and he gave some reasons that are based on statute as to why.
Or reasons for what?
The statutes are the reason, he gave statutes for the reasons why it won't be acceptable.
What, the camper won't be
Yeah,
accepted?
I mean, I can't see this hurting any, nobody can even see it. I don't understand. Well,
Okay.
If
I
you,
guess I didn't hear
no,
what wasn't acceptable.
because it's, keeping a camper on the property doesn't coincide with the rest of the neighborhood or something.
Neither does our home. Our home, like Roger said, it sits out back far, and the property that is next door, that is our property, the other lot, lot number, which one is that?
They know which one.
Our side lot is where the camper sits, and it sits behind a fence that's like a stockade fence. And Mr. Wilkins probably has pictures of that. I'm not quite sure what you've viewed, but for that not to be equal to the other housing and homes in the neighborhood doesn't seem to qualify to me, because it sits so far back. If something sits so far back that it's not noticeable from the road, then how is that, how does that pertain to something being, viewed as undesirable in a neighborhood?
Sure.
When the fence is so tall.
Mm-hmm. How tall's the
That's like
fence?
saying you don't want to see a doghouse behind a huge,
Okay.
like a doghouse behind that wall. Why would somebody object to a doghouse behind that wall. Nobody can see it.
Understood. Okay, let's open public comment, so you can stay there. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on public comment? Okay, so if you guys want to have a seat in the front row, you guys can have a seat and let him step to the microphone. Yep.
Thank you for your time.
Yep, you're welcome.
Good evening. My name is David Kuda. I am here representing Plum Hollow Country Club, located at 21613 Lasher Road. And basically, I'm here to agree with the council's denial of said trailer. The property is viewable from the golf course, and we at Plum Hollow feel that it would discount possibly property values and aesthetics in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And since I don't see anyone else in the auditorium, we're going to close public comment and turn it over to the board. Let's go first. Ms. Libet? Questions? Thoughts?
Well, my initial thought is it appears to be being used as a commercial property. Is that what I understand here with a lot of?
That seems to be what the city said in the findings of
feels,
fact.
yeah.
The homeowner disagreed.
So that's disturbing, and then it seems like adding another very large vehicle to this list of things would not be a positive for the community. There are rules that we all try to live by. So also, I had a question. Will anyone be living in that camper?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, let's let them see if you could, because the meeting is recorded, and just so it's properly in the minutes.
Yes, it's just stored there. We use the camper to go camping, but we don't I mean, if you saw our house, we're not going to live in the camper. I mean, that's.
It's a seasonal camp, it's a camper, so it's seasonal. So we store it there in the off-season.
Okay.
Which you can't, nobody can see it. If you drive by there, if anybody drove by there, you can't see it from the road.
You can't
It's
see,
not-
you can't see any of the equipment either.
Right.
The equipment,
It's all
the
behind
equipment
a
that
fence.
he moves our
Logs.
firewood with is not visible from the road either.
Right.
Our son used to do a concrete cutting business in years past, so we erected the fence so that even his truck wouldn't show in the neighborhood, and that's still there. And so now it's convenient for us to park the camper in off-seasons so that it's right accessible to our home on that side lot. And so because it's accessible and it's not viewable from the road, just like our firewood, that's not accessible, it's not viewable from the road. It's accessible to us on our side lot, but not viewable from the road.
Okay.
So we're the only house on the street that chose to build right back by the beautiful river. And so that's, that's where we put everything towards the back to be out of the way of the visibility to the community.
Okay. Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the homeowner, to be honest with you. That's a very unique property. I do believe when you say that you're retired and you're not operating a business, I do believe you. I think that what you're doing to heat your home, you're allowed to. You're allowed to cut wood up and do that. if you're not using the camper to horse around in and use it as a secondary home, which is what my other, you know, you already said that before I'm talking, but that would have been one of my concerns as well.
Your concern is that it's a secondary home?
No, my concern, if you were actually using that camper to house either yourself or family members, that would have been my concern, but that was alleviated by the fact that
the camper
is only used seasonally and you use it to travel with.
Right, it's just for camping.
Right, so.
It hasn't even been there since we got the notice. We moved it to our other property, so we moved it.
The question I have is, why are you here tonight? Who found out
I
about
don't
this
know.
camper?
I mean, we did move the camper, but we'd like to move the camper back behind the fence. I mean, like I said, nobody can see it. And the other property's an hour and a half away, so I mean, every time we want to go, okay, we got to go an hour and a half, you know. We just like to have the camper behind the fence
Right,
where it
no,
was.
I understand what you're using the camper for. What I'm saying is that, are you here because someone spotted your camper and now you have to get permission to have it on the?
Right, we have to have permission to have it back where it is, right, almost on the river, behind the fence, nobody can see it, but it's on a concrete pad, but they, you know,
Did you have a neighbor call the city saying, hey, Mr. So-and-so has a camper on their property, can you do something about it?
We don't know.
There was a fire at our neighbor's house, and we don't know if firemen saw it or why anybody.
Yeah, we don't.
No one's here.
If anybody went down that street and you look back and you see where you would say, you gotta be kidding me, this is a joke, right?
Well, that's why I'm asking, because this whole visibility question is coming into play. I mean,
I know.
If somebody drove down the street, saw the camper, you know, there.
Right, that's not the case.
Right, I mean, I was sat there for half an hour, looking and looking and looking. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure there's stuff behind his house, but I mean, what does that have to do with me or any of the neighbors? I mean, unless you're doing, you know, some devil worshiping or something crazy back there, you know, I don't see where, you know, if somebody happened to fall upon your property and walked over there and saw it and decided to call the city, I think that's an anomaly, you know. So, in my opinion, I'm sticking with the fact that I don't have a problem with you parking the camper on that long extended vacant lot next to your house, and that's where I'm holding.
Okay.
It is an empty camper during the off-season. We store it with the tarp over it and wrapped up tight.
Right, so that I just, because, you know, I mean, it's a really nice camper, so during the winter, I do put a tarp over it, you know, to keep the snow off of it and all that. It just keeps it nicer, you know.
Okay. Mr. Friedman?
Yeah, I don't have an issue with this camper. If it's not visible to anybody, I don't see how, the neighbor, the country club said that they could see the property. I don't believe they said they could see the camper. I don't think anybody could see this camper. I understand that Southfield has an ordinance not allowing people to park their campers on their property, but I believe that if it, for example, would be in the right kind of garage, they would allow it. In this case, it's not visible to anybody. I don't believe that could be said to be not in character of the surrounding neighborhood when nobody can see it. So I would be fine with this. You know, again, I wouldn't be fine with a camper necessarily that was visible, but I would grant this way.
So my one question is, they obviously own the adjacent property. They could combine the vacant lot with their property, and then this part of the ordinance would not be relevant, correct?
If I may, through the chair, that is correct. If they combined those lots and made it one parcel, it would probably not be an issue.
And then isn't there something else we've talked about campers in driveways or behind privacy fences before, but more in tight neighborhoods, not.
The MRI one.
So, Madam Chair.
I wasn't thinking of that one, but.
The other issue is that it's over 20 feet long and the ordinance requires it to be in a building.
Okay. Okay. So, again, just if they did combine the properties, then that would be a concern that it needed to be in a building.
They would have to park it in a building.
Okay. We could grant.
But we could grant a waiver of that ordinance, couldn't we?
Say that again?
Isn't that what they're asking for, a waiver here? today for?
Well, it's on a vacant parcel without a primary residence.
Right, but I'm saying.
It's supposed to be,
couldn't
they're
they
not
ask
supposed to
for-
be anything on that parcel.
I understand, but whatever ordinance they'd be violating, they could come here and ask for a waiver of that.
Yes.
Right. So I just would like to add to what I was saying. I have no issues with it. I do have some concern, though, about granting a permanent, I believe, waiver of the zoning standards for the camper. We don't know what the nature of the neighborhood is. Is there a way to make one of our waivers sunset?
With the
after
ownership?
10 years or some time, if the character of the neighborhood changes, would it, because we're granting a pretty blanket waiver if we do grant the waiver. And it's not, I'm just worried about that, but otherwise I would grant it.
So, I mean, again, I tend to agree. And my suggestion was going to be how long have you lived in your home?
22 years.
22 years, and have you owned that vacant lot that same
I
amount of
built the
time too?
house. I'm sorry?
Have you owned the vacant adjacent lot
yes,
that long too?
correct,
Is
yes.
there a reason you haven't combined them into one?
They were two 2 3/4 acre lots, each one, and I bought both of them, and didn't know I had to combine them.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, you're not required to. You'd get one tax bill instead of two. You'd have one
Right.
parcel number to keep track of instead of two.
Right,
It's-
yeah, I didn't do anything because I didn't know I had to or whatever. Yeah, it just wasn't an issue,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree that I don't think the country club can actually see. It's halfway back, it's not near the end, back of your parcel. I assume beyond the river, it's wooded?
I'm sorry?
Beyond the river, it's wooded at the back of your parcel? Before you get to the country club?
The parcels are the river's the halfway point of the property.
Right.
So the property goes.
And
where
then
the
what's
river-
beyond the river?
Yeah,
Before
the
you get to
property
the
goes
country
twice as
club?
far back, yes.
And is it wooded, or what is it? behind?
Wooded, wetlands, wooded, and then goes up on the other side. When I first bought the property, I went up to see where they staked it out, and this guy come up and said, "Get off my property." I said, "You see that stake right there? You're on my property." "I'm sorry." I said, "Well, you can keep cutting my grass."
Yeah.
It was kind of funny, but yeah, it goes way back.
Well, that's also a good point, because no one can see the camper from that side. It's the river and,
Okay.
acres of property behind it.
Right.
And so that was our appeal, to see if we could have a variance, because we also store it on a pad so that the tires don't get rotted in the winter.
On concrete.
So it's merely a convenience to us that we're just appealing to you people here tonight just for variance, or, I have a hearing loss, so I didn't quite
Yeah. Well, there's a few of us that are
understand.
inclined to grant it. We're just trying to understand our authority.
Oh, sure.
Madam Chair,
We want to help you as much as we can.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it possible that I could hear again the statement by the gentleman at Plum Hollow?
He just left.
I know. It should be in the minutes, though.
But the minutes are recorded and that's why we get them so much later. So, I mean, I can tell you what I wrote down. I wrote down that he said he agrees to deny, it discounts the aesthetics because they think they could see the camper.
Exactly.
He didn't say he
That's
could see the
what I thought
camper.
he said.
He said he can see the property.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
well,
just,
yeah, he thinks. He doesn't know. Yeah,
Golf course.
right, right. So, okay.
Through the chair to the board, Mr. Friedman had asked if variance was granted, if it could be reversed in the future. So I just want to read from our rules of procedure. It's Article 5. It says, "Any decision of the board favorable to the applicant shall remain valid only as long as the information or data relating thereto are found to be correct and the conditions upon which the resolution was based are maintained." So as long as the facts or as long as the conditions of this property remain, then yes, this variance would be granted for the lifetime of the property.
and I can imagine we can read into it that we could give as a reason because it can't be seen from the road. And if
That would be our
changes-
condition.
Yeah, that would be a condition.
So for the positioning of the camper.
Yeah, the camper can't be seen from the road. Okay.
How tall is your fence?
10 feet.
10 feet?
It's a stockade fence. Yeah, it's,
that allowed in the ordinance? Just want to make sure we're not, right? Because the fence isn't adjacent to the house.
The fence has no permits and has never been permitted. It's made out
But if
of
it
sawn
doesn't,
logs.
if they don't change it, correct, it's grandfathered into,
There's no such thing as grandfathered. It's an illegal fence.
okay.
And there's a
Is it-
truck there that
it's
says
not-
Wilkins Construction on it, LLC with a DOT number.
That, my son had that truck and he no longer parks it there, it's permanently not going to be there. He's got other place, so that truck with the DOT will not be there.
It isn't there.
Right.
Okay.
What, Janie's truck?
No, it hasn't been there for 2 years.
Well, no, it hasn't been 2 years. Anyways, yeah, my son's truck won't be there.
What do you think of Mr. Friedman?
No,
Okay, okay. What do we want to do?
There's just too much here. I'm totally not in favor of that because we have rules for a reason and there's rules and there just keeps being more and more and more layers here. So I'm just not in favor. If there are some things that can be done to make this come into compliance, I'm not even torn. I'm just, no.
Okay. Mr. Rogers, you're pretty much where you said you haven't said anything else since then, but.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, if we granted them this waiver, this camper layout would be for the rest of the life of the property, as long as it's not redeveloped in some.
Right, or some road comes halfway through the lot or something.
Right. Yeah, I just, to me, it's a once in a really boom. On one way you could sit there and say, well, are we opening up a Pandora's box? Other people are going to want to park their campers on their vacant lots. I'm like, Southfield doesn't have, there's, every single subdivision is completely different. We don't have cookie cutter platted subdivisions. Not everything's a rectangle. We got pie-shaped lots, we got rivers, we got all kinds of stuff, and it's very large. I mean, Southfield's a very large geographic city, and, you have to take, everything into consideration. I do take everything into consideration that Olet said, but in the end of the day, I still stick with what I said. I would grant them a waiver.
I would grant, I just want to add one thing. Plum Hollow was here because you guys noticed the wrong people on the wrong property. They aren't even close to this property and they can't see. I don't know what he was saying he can see, but it's not, it's a mile and a half.
I know, having
you have
golf
a thing
there.
On the legal notice, there was an error.
Yeah, so you noticed that they thought a property right here next to them
Okay.
was.
He might have realized that while he was here, and that might
He
have
might
been
have
when he
realized that,
left.
and also, and like I said, I did notice, he didn't say he could see the trailer, he said he could see the property.
Okay.
And he was worried that a property right next to this golf course, but if you look at a map,
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, the legal notice talks about a property on Gulfview.
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay, so that's relevant as well. So there are no neighbors present to speak against this property.
Right.
Got it.
That's
Okay.
important.
That is important.
That's important.
Because it was corrected and the right people got notice, right?
Yes.
Okay,
We just had a case where 30 people show up.
right, correct. And their adjacent neighbors who were like
Exactly.
a half a football field aren't
Exactly.
here,
And that's what I'm
right?
saying. If their neighbors really were,
The ones complaining, let's say.
exactly, then they would all be.
How long have you owned the camper?
Just a year ago, we bought it, we upsized.
Yeah, we upsized.
Okay.
When they said, when we camp with the kids and all the grandkids are there, it's too small, so we upgraded and
Okay,
happy
so
wife,
it's been
happy
there
life,
last winter?
I'm sorry?
It was stored there over the winter last year?
Yeah, it was there for the whole winter, yes.
Okay.
I covered it up with a tarp, because I just like to keep it nice,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree that I would grant this waiver, so who wants to make a motion about it?
I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
The appellants, in regard to case 23-15, the appellants Roger and Linda Wilkins, owners, are requesting the following waiver from the board to permit the storage of a camper-style travel trailer on a vacant lot without the primary use of a single-family dwelling. The property is located on the west side of Indian Street between Shiawassee Road and Adeline Drive, 0 Indian Street, symbol parcel 2431176-011, zone RE, single-family residential. The appeal is to section 5.62, article 5 of the chapter 45 of the Southfield City Code, and I move that we grant the waiver to permit the storage of a camper-style travel trailer on a vacant lot without the primary use as a single-family dwelling, based on the following reasons: that the camper is not visible from the road, and that none of the neighbors, after having been noticed, have registered a objection to it.
Can I add an amendment that it's because they're also the adjacent property owner is their
And
primary
because
residence?
they, the Wilkins own the lot adjacent to their own lot and do have a primary residence on that property.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, 3-1, your request is granted, and that's it.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome.
Thanks for your time today.
You're welcome, have a good evening. Okay, so that closes our public hearing, and we have 2 sets of minutes. Minutes from April 4th. I'm sorry, yeah, April 4th. Wow, I thought I read that wrong. April 4th, 2023. Anybody have any changes or corrections? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes for April 4th?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and minutes from May 2nd. Any corrections or changes?
None.
No? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes for May 2nd?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, both sets of minutes are approved. Looks like we have a request from staff to cancel the July 25th meeting because we have no cases. Can I have a motion for that?
So moved.
And a
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we will hear next week if August 15th needs to be canceled. Okay. Any miscellaneous items? Okay. I guess the only thing I would say is if the Ravines case comes back, we might want to ask Mr. Havis to be present. Okay. Has there been any other discussion on additional board members from anyone? No? Okay.
No, I haven't heard anything.
Okay. All right. Everybody call their favorite city council member. See if we can get a 5-member board.
Can we find somebody?
Yes.
Were they?
And make recommendations, absolutely.
Okay.
That's where Jason came from, right? Myra suggested
I
it.
probably know some people that would do it.
There you go. Call your friends. Call in your friends. All right.
And you probably do have I also know of an application you have coming probably for the August meeting. Guy told me he's going to be applying any day.
Okay. Is your son going to apply?
Good job, Mikey.
Hey,
All
nicely
right.
done.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting is adjourned.